and welcome. As always, I'm Abbie. This is Stories Lived, Stories Told, and here's my question for today. What are the limits you place on yourself? A big part of using a communication perspective is looking at the patterns in our lives. And whether we like it or not, recognizing the ways that we contribute to those patterns, seeing ourselves as active participants in the creation of our social worlds, whether those social worlds are the kind that we want to be making or not. So what are the ways we limit ourselves? This is a good question to keep in mind for part 2 of this conversation with Romi. If you haven't listened to part 1, you'll want to go back and do that first. Today, we are continuing our conversation by exploring both Romi and I's relationship to the enneagram and the way that that has helped us to better understand ourselves and the limits we place on ourselves. Today, Romi's also going to share some stories about her own life and the way that she has met transformational moments. Let's jump in with Romi.
We're always making a network of conversations, a network of conversations. So you can think about an organization actually equaling a network of conversations.
Yeah.
Conversations in the foreground, and there are conversations in the background. What's more powerful? What do you think determines people's actions more? The ones that are in the foreground are official, or the ones that are in the background?
I'm tempted to say background.
It's background.
Yeah, those messages, you can internalize them, whether it's, said explicitly or not.
Right. So how are we making it? Actually shining the light on how we make that which we are complaining about is really critical to shift and cause transformational change. You have to be able to see how you're making it. You have to be able to see that you are at cause there, as well as some other people. Isn't it? You're not the sole cause, right? But you are participating in it. How can you shift that? It doesn't take a lot of people to shift it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take every single person. It takes people that are usually looked at as the social connectors. It takes the people with informal authority as well as formal authority, both. And there are a lot of them, informal authority. My work with the enneagram helps me help others make better social worlds, in that people can become very aware of when their ego is driving a conversation.
Yes.
By understanding their ego structure with using the enneagram, and understanding what their quote essence structure is in the enneagram. So I'll say it this way. So when we're born into life, ego isn't bad. It's functional. It helps us make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, if we believe that our personality is the ego, we are kidding ourselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we believe our identity is our ego, we are kidding ourselves. So the work I do with the Enneagram is all about and the Enneagram is about what are the motivations, not
behaviors.
Yeah. Most personality assessments look at behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element to looking at behaviors, but the real critical thing, and why I really love the Enneagram, is that the Enneagram shows me what box I'm in, but that I'm always boxing in. I'm boxed myself in with my own personality and my own identity. And it also can show me the way out. And that's why I started learning it. And what do I mean by the way out? How you can transcend. So I'm interested in transformation and transcendence. So how you can transcend the limits that you have automatically and unawarely assumed for yourself. And my work with organizations was similar to that. Is what are the limits that you have unawarely and automatically assumed that are your limits and that don't have to be your limits? So that's what the Enneagram helps me do on a personal, in a personal way with people. And then with teams, I've worked with a team in Pfizer with the Enneagram, and their awareness now of each other's particular Enneagram, as well as what is the team when it gets together function as, which is different.
Interesting, yeah.
Than anything. How does that work? That really helps them. It frees them up to actually use the appropriate and choose this appropriate contexts from which to deal with their concerns and situations, their goals, their, fulfilling their dreams for their career, all those things. And that's why I really love using that.
Yeah, I too have a love for the Enneagram, and the two kind of connections that I've made in my life is one that I had a similar experience. I'm an Enneagram 2. And when I first started hearing, what does that look like? Or what is an Enneagram 2? Who is an Enneagram 2? I had the same experience that I did, honestly, in a lot of my interpersonal communication classes, where it was that I was not being told something new, really, but I was being given language for something I already knew to be true, but maybe hadn't had language for up until that point. And so when we talked about avoidance in conflict, or, different dynamics in relationships, I was able to say, oh, I have already experienced that. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like a recognition moment, rather than like I'm learning about something new and foreign. It's just, oh, now I have language for this thing I was already familiar with. And so that was my experience sitting in my communication classes, learning all of this great language that exists around communication theories. And then a similar experience as I learned about the Enneagram, to feel like I already knew all these things to be true about myself. I'm just hearing it put into words in a way that I never had before, which to me is incredibly empowering.
I'm really glad about that. And has it given you more access to the other dimensions of your self? How has that happened?
In a similar way in which knowing about CMM has, which I would trace the roots of both of those back to meaning making. Because again, as I said, growing up, my understanding of the world was very black and white. So there weren't any conversations about choices and how we made meaning. It was just, this is the meaning, and, because I said so, kind of thing. And so when I started really diving into CMM and understanding the function of meaning making and how we choose to make meaning, that was liberating for me in a way to say, I can choose to make different meaning here. And it kind of helps me to feel more in control of the meaning I make, rather than having the meaning control me. Because I'm thinking
that's really good.
Right. That I'm thinking it's the only way that meaning can be made. It just opens up a lot more room for conversation. And I just think that is the same function the Enneagrams had for me in my life as well, to say, well, this is how I make meaning, because I've tried to use it to try to understand other people in my life and other relationships. It's been helpful for understanding myself, but also myself in relationship to these other people who are all making meaning in their own way, which is not to say either of us is right or wrong, but just that they're different and they can coexist, and they do coexist. And how can we best make them coexist so there's less tension and friction and more collaboration?
When you were thinking about yourself as the Enneagram 2, did you also start to recognize patterns of how you would set up relationships?
Yes.
And how you would address those? And what were some of those patterns?
Yeah, one of the, I guess, I don't know if you would call this a pattern, but one of the things that sticks with me that I could point to a number of moments in my life and use now to understand the choices I'm making, or help to affirm myself in the choices I'm making, is that as a 2, stating your needs is difficult because of the fear of stating those needs leading to disconnection when the greatest desire of the two is connection. And so I can see how throughout different relationships, I have avoided saying what I needed in order to preserve connection. And so only recently have I tried to be more aware of that in a way to change the meaning around that, to say, you know, I'd like to be in the kinds of relationships where I can say what I need and also stay connected. And so those are kind of the relationships I'm trying to cultivate. And so that feels like a pattern, if you will. What is your Enneagram number?
I identify as a 4, but specifically as a self-preservation 4, which is the counter type to the main type. In other words, it looks least like what 4s normally quote, or the general perception of 4. So every type has 3 subtypes, and it's the subtype. So let's think of the Enneagram in 3 different ways, at least just in terms of quote typing, okay?
Yeah.
So when we're born, you could say we're born at our highest essence. There's hasn't been any imprinting yet, or not much, right? So let's say we're born with an essence. Let's say that's the most, quote, true you. Doesn't have a lot of form or shape or color or dimensionality. It's being, pure being, right? All right. The ego develops. The ego is a mask.
Yeah.
It's the mask. It's trying to get back to that condition of being and pure essence, right? Well, then there's the mask of the mask, and that's the subtype.
Right.
Okay. So, and the mask of the mask is influenced by the strongest survival instinct that you got. And we all have 3. We have self-preservation, which is about comfort, self-reliance, basic needs, practical needs, like that. And that's one. Then we have a sexual or a one-to-one survival instinct. And that's all about, we know that we have to get intimate, not necessarily sex or intercourse, but intimacy, right? We need intimacy. We need to belong to somebody. We need to actually connect powerfully with one other. And then there is the social instinct. We know we can't survive if we aren't in a group. Groups, the groups are, human beings will die if they're not in a group, right?
Right.
So social, sexual, and self-preservation are the 3 dominant survival instincts. And that dominant, whatever is dominant, whichever instinct, survival instinct, is strongest with you, combines with the main type passion, or call it your vice or passion, really, the thing that is the driving force of that personality ego construction, right? That motivator. And envy is the passion of 4. So what does envy really show up as most of the time is comparing. It looks better over there than over here. How come I can't have what they have? How come and here's another example of it. Admiring others so much that you don't factor in yourself, right? Or your needs, which is very close to 2.
Yes.
Correct? So a self-preservation 4 is a counter type, and that means they don't look like, normally 4s are thought of as dramatic, romantic, very, very sensitive beings, and conflicted a lot, right? and very keyed in on authenticity and being creative. Okay, so how does the self-preservation show up? That's a mask of that. They will see something they admire and they'll work hard to get it, never complaining about it, which is very contrary to the social four, who will complain a lot.
Yeah.
Or the sexual four, who will get angry about it. You got that? So it's way different.
Yeah.
And so the healing path, or the path, the transformational path for a self-preservation four, looks very different from the transformational paths to the other two subtypes. So do you know your subtype?
I don't know my subtype.
Okay. Well, that's that's something I would recommend you start to learn or find out about. Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. And I can recommend a great book about all that and all that stuff. So if you'd like. So, but yeah, so the work I do with the Enneagram is, and the Enneagram has so many dimensions and facets.
Yeah.
And it's really not just a personality, a typing system.
Right.
And it's so much more complex than that. It's all about, I would call it dynamic energy that's always moving, and being aware of what is motivating and shaping how you interpret and make meaning, exactly like you said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As well as having access to all of the other dimensions of the Enneagram to make meaning. So there's some ways to find out about, for instance, in my profile, I identify as a main type 4, but I have a lot of 8. I also have a lot of 2. So and one of the things I have the least of is enneatype 9, which is all about peace and about being easygoing, right? Easygoing, seeing the whole, being peaceful and calm, and that. So there's all kinds of things about it that make it fascinating for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of my conversations that I've had on this podcast kind of come back to this idea of just our humanity and getting back to a place where we are allowed to live into and express the fullness of our humanity. I've had conversations about gender and about the ways that, norms and stereotypes in our society keep us from expressing our fullness, because certain qualities are attributed to different genders, and that kind of gatekeeps you from, the other half. If I, if I need to feel angry, that's not as, well received on a woman as a man generally. Or if a man wants to be nurturing, or, maybe some other feminine qualities that, again, are just things that we've made meaning on and chosen. And yeah, just owning all of our stories and getting to be honest about the things that we struggle with, and that not, making us look weak, but enriching our human experience in the way that we are with each other. And that's kind of what I'm hearing in what you're saying, is that in being able to identify with one number, but also understanding all the other numbers of the Enneagram, and like you said, the many, many beautiful layers and complexities within it, it feels like a version of letting ourselves step into our full humanity. Some people might feel, like you said, boxed in by saying you are this number or that number, but if you are really understanding the Enneagram, I believe it's actually a kind of liberating thing, that it's not trying to gatekeep you from all these other qualities or behaviors or motivations that are, one of many ways that humans are in the world. It's expansive in that kind of way to invite you into your full humanity.
For instance, it's not just your full humanity, it's other people's humanity.
Yes.
It's giving permission, acceptance, and welcoming other people's humanity. So let's talk about it. And how do we do that? We can do that in an evolutionary way by understanding and exploring and inquiring into the high sides or the essence of each one of the different types, especially on either side of you, and how you might be showing or demonstrating aspects of, let's talk about you, Abbie, one of Ennea 1 or Ennea 3. And there's low sides of that and there's high sides of that. And low meaning automatic ego-driven ways, high sides meaning more integrated essence, ego, more essence expressed sides. And that's a pretty important thing. But plus the Enneagram, and for the most transformational change, you actually look at the dynamic lines and how you're related to other types in the whole kind of like map of humanity, if you want to say, and how you're related to 4, Abbie, and how you're related to 8.
Yep.
And using, again, how do you use those? Well, you gather resources. At 4, you go into yourself. So you were talking about needs before. It's difficult for you to say what you need. It's not just difficult to say it. That's when you're going to 8. It's difficult for you to know what your needs are. That's what you need to do first at 4, is to understand, what do I really want?
Yeah.
And how am I just rolling over because I think that's what they'll want me to want?
Yeah.
Yeah. So am I giving to them to get something back? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very tough to keep aware that we're back to the CMM question. What are you making?
Yes.
How are you making it? You're making it through interpreting things and making meaning and then acting out of the meanings you've made, right? And what the Enneagram allows you to do is to really cut away the baloney in your stories and to get pretty clear about, that's an old story I've got. Do I want to use that anymore? No. Yeah. I don't have to use that story anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it's a pretty great tool, and opportunity for spiritual development. And that's what I'm currently doing with it.
Yeah.
For myself, as I'm participating and practicing the diamond approach, which is another way of looking at life and how one evolves in life, and using that a lot. So,
yeah. I just really keep coming back to this word that, you use in your work of transformational.
Yes.
And I feel that stories can be so transformational for us, which ones we choose to tell ourselves, and the ones that we hear, and, the untold stories too, obviously matter a lot. And so I'm just curious, what's your understanding of what it means for something to be transformational, or what is maybe the kind of transformational story that you hope to tell people?
You mean personal story or what?
Yeah, however you want to answer that question. I'm just curious maybe about the role of the transformational in your life.
There have been many critical moments of transformation in my life, or
Mm,
you could also call them in the CMM way bifurcation points,
yeah.
where the choice becomes you could go one way or another, right?
Yeah.
Um, most of my okay, let's talk about design versus circumstance. And you like you said, you grew up in Indiana and you didn't have a complex view of things. Things were black and white.
Hmm.
Uh, and and there was just an expectation that's how it was always going to be. Yeah.
Hmm. Yes.
Okay. Would you call that a design life or a circumstantial life?
Mm, a circumstantial, I guess.
Yeah. So at every moment, as you were saying, we have an opportunity to choose
Yeah.
what meaning are we making, correct?
Yeah.
What future are we creating? What present are we creating? What being in the present?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, the my transformation points were initially triggered by bad circumstances. Alcoholic family, parents chose to get divorced,
Yeah.
like different circumstances, right? And then in my second marriage, um, lots of circumstances combined to not good circumstances at the age of 45 for me to say, I can't stay married to you any longer. And I have to take the children.
Mm.
I'll do shared custody, but I won't live with you anymore. And I won't take any money out of the marriage because I knew that if I did, I would never have any peace. So that
Mm.
means no pension funds, no alimony, no. Uh, I left the house. I left
Mm.
a $1 million house
Yeah.
stuff and had two small children, ages 5 and 7. That was a big transformational moment for me.
Yeah.
But the choice was, and here we go back. I didn't know the enneagram then, but uh, I can see how my motivation at the time was I have to I have to live authentically to myself. And I have to choose what is peaceful and respectful and works for myself, my sons, and even my ex-husband,
Yes.
and move from there. So at the age of 45, I had two small children. I hadn't worked in 5 years, and I hadn't worked in 5 years. And I couldn't go back into a career that this thing I was doing. I So I didn't have a career, and I had to pay half of having my children live. How was I going to do that? Boy, that was a big moment. And um, I used poetry, not believe it or not, Mary Oliver's poetry
Oh, yeah.
and specifically the Wild Geese poem,
Mm.
and my network of friends and my network of love and support and friends. And I got a job as in a boutique consulting firm in New Jersey, even though I lived in California, and I flew every other week
Wow.
for work.
Oh,
And I raised my two sons, and I went from nothing, having zero money, zero money. And the story was we uh, we we had just moved out into this rental house, and I had just rented this little house, and my sons and I were in the car going to the ATM to get some cash, and there was this homeless lady in the parking lot, and I got cash for us. And I think I got something like $60. And this lady said, "Oh, please, will you help? I have children, I have two children or three children, and blah, blah, blah." And I gave her $20. And my eldest son said to me, he was 8 at the time or 7. And he said, "Mom, why did you give her so much money? We need that money." And I said, we could be her.
Mm.
She needs it more than we do.
Yeah. Wow.
We'll figure another way. And that's, that because I choose to live that way
Yeah.
rather than other ways.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible. I could work. You know, I could do things. And anyway, so that was a transformational moment. But it was a big deal at the time, and it remains. And my courage, resilience, and I think my ethic around how I want to live my life was pretty strong.
Mm.
And that's the moment.
Well, one, I really appreciate you sharing that story, and, living authentically is something that I really value too. And I think that's probably what makes me feel so drawn to those kinds of stories, the stories that I guess I would call the transformational moments, the bifurcation points of our lives, because I just think we love a pretty story that is wrapped up in a bow and everybody was happy the whole time, and beginning, middle, end, and it's nice and clean. But really, those are not the stories of our lives. It's not usually how it goes. And I think I just crave more of the stories that, again, the function I see it having is connecting us back to our humanity and our shared humanity.
Yeah.
And I can see that for you in that story. Connecting with that woman and recognizing your own humanity, her humanity, and then me as a hearer of this story, feeling connected to you and my own humanity. And I just think that feels like the practice, the practice of making a better social world in the moment is sharing more of those stories and creating the spaces for others. I think that's what feels really important to me, is that I can say, share your stories all day long. But who's hearing them, and what does the space look like? And if you are going to be a teller of stories, then do you feel safe to do so? And who are the people that are listening to you and making you feel like you will be heard? And I wonder if that's, maybe something that you think about as well, that maybe in some of your work, you are a hearer of stories, or one of the people that is working to create this space so that the stories that need to be told can be told, and
Yes,
people
I
that
am.
need to tell them have the space to do so.
Right. That's exactly right. Because everyone needs to tell their story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And everybody's story is a little different. It's not all the same.
Yeah.
And accepting those differences and really respecting and honoring those differences, it's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think that Enneagram has helped me even appreciate that more than ever.
Yeah. Yes. Me as well. Yeah. Because it does help you to say that, your story is not right and someone else's story is not wrong. It is, all of these stories coexist, and they can coexist.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. Well, Romi, I so appreciate this conversation with you. And just as we wrap up, I want to know, what else you want to say? What do you want to end this conversation with about stories or change or your own life?
I think that I want to say that, I'm 72 and I'm still learning. And
Yes.
I'm going to be learning until I die.
Yes.
That's it. And we have an opportunity to live fully and live wholeheartedly and open-heartedly with a curious mind, a centered spirit every single day. And I think that the ability to question and challenge what we're, quote, given,
Yes.
or what we've inherited, or what has been expected is so essential to living a full life. And then the courage to go and explore things and to try new things on and to invent possibility and to co-design, co-create, collaborate for a new constitutive social reality in all kinds of ways, in your marriage, in your friendships, in your, volunteer organizations, in your workplaces, in your spiritual organizations, in the world, in the government. I talked about working in corporations. I've also worked in county and city governments a lot. And it's a lie that civil servants don't want to do anything. That's a lie.
Yeah.
And every person wants to make a difference somehow, some way with someone else. And to respect how that bubbles out of them is critical. As I said, my purpose is for people to discover and delight with what really matters in life. That's it.
I think that is very well said and beautiful. And this conversation has just energized me, and I appreciate that as one of the things that I get out of doing this podcast is getting to have energizing conversations with interesting people like you. So again, I so appreciate your time today and your perspective and the stories that you've shared. It means a lot to me.
You're welcome. And, I have really good teachers currently. The people that I interact with in the Diamond Approach, the people that the Beatrice Chestnut and Uranio Paez and Chestnut Baez Enneagram Academy, Deep Coaching Institute, people through IEQ9 is an organization also about the Enneagram. And every dialogue partner, as Barnett Pierce used to say, every dialogue partner that was every book I read and everything else. And so find good teachers, read a lot, engage with people, get out there. I think it's great. And I'm thrilled with what you're doing. I'm so impressed with it.
Romi.
And I really learned from you today about meaning making in another whole way, and another whole take. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Romi. Okay, that is all for our conversation with Romi. As you reflect on part 1 and part 2 of this conversation, I want you to keep thinking about the question I posed at the beginning of the episode today, which you can also find in the show notes, and that is, what are the limits you place on yourself? I'd also have you go back and think about the question I asked at the beginning of part 1, which is, what is possible? With the follow-up question to that being, what else is possible once we start to ask ourselves what is possible? I think these two questions are great to reflect on together so you can understand what is possible, and then get out of your own way by acknowledging the things that might be limiting you and making new choices. As always, I am supported by the CMM Institute for Personal and Social Evolution. This podcast is one of many initiatives that is moving us toward a new present of a better social world, kind of like what we talked about with Romi today, trying to make that better social world in the present moment in each episode. As far as a next turn for the podcast, please share this episode along with part 1 with someone you want to invite into the conversation. Another key part of developing a communication perspective is to be in dialogue with people. So bring others into this space And also reach out to me. That's a great way to stay in dialogue too. You can reach me through email, through the website, or through commenting on Instagram and YouTube. You can find links to all of these places in the show notes. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being curious, and thank you for being a part of this story. I'm Abbie, and this has been Stories Lived, Stories Told.